So what do Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Donald Trump have in common? Well, it might be more than you think. Today, we're going to break down Donald Trump's power strategies, and we're going to do it by looking at a very clear pattern, his praise for the world's most powerful autocrats.
It all kind of crystallizes with quotes like this one. Back in 2018, Donald Trump saw how North Koreans gave Kim Jong-un their absolute undivided attention, and he reportedly said, "I want my people to do the same." Now, that's not just some throwaway line. It's really a window into a specific way of thinking about power, and it makes you ask a pretty big question. What is this dictator envy really all about?
Okay, so to really understand the strategy here, we have to start by looking at the behavior itself. And the first piece of the puzzle is this consistent and, let's be honest, often glowing praise for some of the world's most famous strongmen.
Right, so let's take his comments on North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Donald Trump has called him very talented, smart, and said he ran it tough. This wasn't just a one-time thing. It's a theme that keeps coming up, and it shows this admiration for a style of leadership that's all about absolute, unquestioned control.
And it's not just Kim Jong-un. You see the same thing with Vladimir Putin. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Donald Trump called the move genius and pretty savvy. So the message, as laid out in the source material, seems pretty clear. In this worldview, being strong and decisive is what matters most, and leaders who follow the old rules are, well, just dumb.
Yeah, when you put the language side by side like this, the pattern just jumps right out at you. The words he uses for both Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, smarts, genius, strong, tough, it all points to this consistent admiration for a very specific kind of unchecked power. It's not about ideology, it's about the ability to act without constraints.
But what's the why behind all this? To really get to the core of the strategy, we've got to go deeper than just the public comments. We need to look at the psychology that might be driving them. The sources we're looking at argue that what's said on the outside is really rooted in some powerful stuff happening on the inside.
Okay, so one of the key traits that psychological observers point to is narcissism. You know, that excessive self-love and just this desperate need to be in the spotlight. This craving for everyone's attention is captured perfectly in a quote that's been attributed to Donald Trump. "I'm the king. They all kiss my ass." I mean, that's a pretty revealing statement about what might be a core driver for his actions.
And there's another really important concept here, psychological projection. This is a classic defense mechanism where a person basically takes their own anxieties or traits they don't like about themselves and pins them on someone else. And according to his critics, this is a tool that Donald Trump uses all the time.
And this slide shows you exactly how that might work. According to the observers cited in our sources, Donald Trump's favorite insults, calling people stupid, weak, crooked, these might actually be reflections of his own deepest fears. Fears about his own competence, his own strength, his own loyalty. So from this perspective, putting other people down is really a way of propping himself up. So how does all this psychology stuff actually turn into a political strategy? Because these traits don't just stay internal, right? The sources suggest they become the actual foundation for a playbook on how to get and keep power.
Analysts have drawn a pretty direct line from Donald Trump's methods to the ideas in books like Robert Greene's Laws of Power. The playbook is super clear. First, get attention no matter what. Second, crush your enemies completely. Third, be unpredictable, keep everyone off balance. And fourth, tap into that deep need people have to believe in something or someone big.
And what's really wild is how closely this playbook mirrors the one used by other authoritarians. Demanding total loyalty? Check. Calling the media the enemy? Check. Crushing any dissent? Pardoning your friends? It's all there. These are all tactics we've seen in Donald Trump's career that look a lot like the methods used by leaders like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un to grab control.
And that brings us to a really critical question. What happens when you unleash this kind of strongman playbook inside a democracy like the United States? A system that was literally built with checks and balances to stop any one person from getting too much power. As Harvard scholar Stephen Levitsky puts it, pretty bluntly, anytime a leader with authoritarian impulses is elected, it's a risk for democracy. And we're not just talking about a theoretical risk here. It's a direct challenge to the rules and institutions that basically hold a democratic society together.
The sources we're looking at paint a pretty chilling hypothetical picture. It would start with using the power of the government itself, targeting political opponents with investigations.
Then it would move to the courts, sidelining judges who dissent, chipping away at the whole idea of the rule of law. And it all culminates in silencing the news media, which has already been called an enemy of the people.
Once you take out that pillar of accountability, the path to unchecked power gets a whole lot clearer.
So this brings us to what our sources frame as a kind of final act. When you lay out the potential consequences, you realize this is way more than just another political debate. It's really a defining moment, a nation at a crossroads.
But, and this is a really important but, the story is not over. While the ambition for unchecked power might be clear, a democratic system is not a pushover. The very institutions that are under pressure, the courts, Congress, and public opinion, those are the checks and balances designed specifically to push back against these exact impulses. And so we're left with this massive question. If a leader with these strategies and impulses returns to power, which story gets written? Is it a story of reaffirmation, where our democratic institutions bend but don't break? Or is it a story of ruin, where the norms that have held the country together for centuries finally crack? That's the question this explainer leaves us all to think about.